Hi, I am Katie Wood. I teach kindergarten at Pleasant Valley Elementary School.
Hi, my name is Barrett Ragsdale, and I'm a social science teacher at Spring Garden School.
Hello, I'm Matthew Ross. I'm the physical education teacher at Brooks Elementary in Noonan, Georgia. We're group 3 of the class. This is our diversity case study project. We discussed in depth on the 7 different steps that are required for the case. And we started with our first one, which is identify the problem. We found 5 different main problems that we located throughout the case study. And our first one was where the 2 students misinterpreted their directions from the teacher. The second one was the teacher's plans were not completely successful due to the kids not understanding what exactly that they were supposed to be doing. Our third one was a clear definition of ethnic clothing. That is definitely a broad and vague statement. So that's probably one big reason why the 2 girls weren't 100% aware and unsure what they were supposed to bring and wear for their costume. Our fourth problem was it better for the 2 girls to sit out of the event, or should they still join? Because they obviously wanted to join because they brought what they were supposed to, but the teacher's instructions weren't 100% clear. So was it better for them just to sit, or should they still be allowed to participate? And our fifth problem was the possibility of students being excluded from participating. That goes along with the 4th problem, but should they still be allowed to participate or not based on what they brought? We looked at 2 varying perspectives, one from the 2 girls and then the second one from the teacher, starting with the 2 students. They were unsure what to wear because of the teacher's instructions, but they still completed the assignment. The second one goes along with the first one. They were confident that what they brought in was appropriate for their culture. And the third one was they should have been allowed to participate based off what they brought in their minds. So they were positive that they should be allowed to partake. Our teacher, she believed that her instructions were clear and concise based on what she instructed the kids to do. She knew and she was very aware of her culture, so she just kind of expected the students to understand and know their culture without giving more instruction, more in-depth knowledge of what they were supposed to be doing. And our last perspective from the teacher, due to a few immigrants in the class, she assumed that a lot of them would know their heritage background, which based off the 2 girls, not all of them were 100% aware of their backgrounds.
The next step in this process was to consider possible challenges and opportunities. The challenges, the first thing that we noticed, would students have the knowledge of one's ethnic heritage to participate in this fully? Like Matthew said in a slide before, the teacher went out and kind of assumed that students would possess the same type of knowledge that she had of her ethnic heritage. Secondly, would students have appropriate attire to participate? Would the attire that they chose, would it be school appropriate? Could it possibly be offensive in some way? Does peer pressure exist? Would students choose not to participate because they would feel they would have some negative backlash from their peers because of maybe some ideas that exist in the dominant culture? And then resources. Would students and their family members, would they possess the materials to come up with these costumes or the representative clothing of their culture? And also, if they didn't, did the teacher have a way to provide these resources to allow students to participate? Some opportunities from this, it would promote cultural awareness. It would allow students to learn about others' perspectives. It would expand cultural borders. Many times individuals get comfortable in their set way of doing things, and things are acceptable to their culture, their ethnicity. So this would allow them to see that there are other ways to do things, and there's other perspectives to look at doing these things, and dress would be one of them. It would create an opportunity for discussion. As a text discusses, this is a necessary thing that we must have today if we want to overcome prejudices and racism, and to promote a multicultural education. And then it would allow individuals to keep a connection to their ethnic identity. Many times in our culture today, people that come from different backgrounds, the various cultures, they're really forced by peer pressure to assimilate into doing things that are culturally acceptable in mainstream society. So this would allow people to hold on to their ethnic identity. Next step is imagine equitable outcomes. All these are not true for this particular case because this case needs some adjustments in a few areas. But if done correctly, this activity would allow for different perspectives to be shared, as was mentioned in the slide before. It would allow every voice to be heard. That was not true about this instance because we've seen where the two girls were not allowed to participate. And that is a problem with having too narrow of ideas for representation of one's culture. It promotes positive self-esteem. If any negative stereotypes exist, it gives a student the opportunity to expound upon these ideas and explain to their peers why things are done a certain way. It also encourages the conversation about these differences that people perceive between cultures.
When you look at the immediate term responses for this situation, you have to think, should the girls be allowed to be involved? Myself as a teacher, I would feel very guilty about leaving them out, and the teacher needs to really think about that, whether she should let them be involved or not. The misconceptions must be addressed with the two girls and with the students. There are many misconceptions in this situation about culture and what culture is. And she also needs to think about doing something in some way that would include and involve each student instead of just the ones targeted for the situation. Policy and practice adjustments for the future. Consider the difference between a multicultural day and international day. Culture is something, when you define it, it looks like customs, arts, social institutions, achievements of people or other social groups. So this could mean many different things. Like I think that this could definitely include the girl on the soccer team. That would fall under the definition of culture. And they also need to think about further education for teachers and students in the future for multicultural education. Finally, when crafting a plan of action, I believe the school needs to have some professional development for their staff on multicultural education. What does it look like? What would it look like to implement that? What does their school policy say about including certain groups or excluding certain groups? That may need to be revisited.
The last portion of this assignment, we were to answer 4 questions. And so these first 2 questions here on this slide, the first question deals with the costumes. Could these, how could these be interpreted, and could these costumes be demeaning? There's a wide range, there's going to be a wide range of interpretations for these costumes, and that's for both people from the culture that the costume represents, as well as people that are outside of the culture. There could be negative viewpoints about these costumes from within the student's culture that would make them a little wary about dressing up. And of course, there could be mainstream ideology that affects negative perspectives that would deter this. So there could be demeaning, and it wouldn't just be from outsiders. And the second question goes right along with the first one. How does it contribute to existing stereotypes and biases? Just like the two girls in the case, they chose two things that may very well have represented their culture, just not the way that the teacher was thinking. She was really stereotyping because she was thinking about the big flamboyant costumes possibly that represents the culture as a whole, and that's not something the students could connect with. So she was stereotyping because she had prior expectations for what she thought represented the culture. So it could contribute to these types of stereotypes and biases.
Okay. When you look at the 5 terms that are mentioned in question 3, it said that oftentimes people use those terms interchangeably, but they are very different from each other. When you look at culture, we talked about culture. It's like a socially transmitted way of thinking, believing, feeling, and acting within a group. But this can be many different types of groups, like the soccer team. Ethnicity is based on your national origin or the national origin of your ancestors. When you look at heritage, heritage is something that practices or characteristics that are passed down from one generation to the next. It's not necessarily anything to do with your ethnicity. Race is usually dependent on physical characteristics. Is something that is not used as much in society today because it's mostly based on physical characteristics. And finally, nationality means like the status of belonging to a particular nation. So some people can belong to multiple nations and have dual citizenship. So these 5 terms are definitely not interchangeable. And I think this is something that the teacher and the school needs to think about for the future when they are designing activities like the one in the case study.
And our last question about ethnic heritage: how do these activities alienate students who do not know their ethnic heritage? All students are completely different. They all come from different backgrounds, different families, religions, races. But it's assignment like this doesn't need to be assigned unless the teacher unless all the students fully understand their ethnic heritage. So the teacher can ask them and see if they know exactly everything that's going on with the activity. If they don't, then she can just ask that they go home and talk to their parents and allow their parents to give them more in-depth knowledge about their ethnic heritage, so that if she was to assign an activity such as this one, then they could all participate and then all be fully aware of all the instructions and everything that was going on.
Let me see.